So we started off with a structure that was about 6 to 7 feet tall, and now... Hi, my name is Charles Malki, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and today we've got the privilege of visiting Alan's property here in West Hills, which is about 35 miles northwest of downtown Los Angeles. Thank you, Alan, for having us.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks. We were here last about a year ago, and I know that you've been the owner here for about, you said, 3 years.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about your past experiences and what this property was like when you first got here, and what you've done with it.
When I first bought the property, there was almost no trees. It came with a handful of mature trees on the property, but it was still pretty exposed. I wanted it to have a little bit more privacy, and I also wanted it to have like a lot of fruit-bearing trees. So I made a point of doing an edible landscape that's focused on privacy, but all using food-bearing trees and cactuses and succulents.
And now, what would you guesstimate? I know there's a lot of trees here
about
now.
60 different individual fruit trees on the property.
So now we've got 60 fruit trees. We're going to take the tour momentarily and see all of the food. A lot of it is behind me, and we'll take a tour throughout the rest of the garden. And so instead of having a property with privacy hedges made out of ficus and other ornamental trees, what Alan's done is he's used food and fruit trees to create that privacy, and at the same time with the benefit of harvesting some food from your garden. And being that you just started planting, you said about 3 years ago, these fruit trees, have you been able to reap the harvest of your efforts yet?
They're all very young still, the fruit trees. People gave me the advice to not allow them to fruit the first year, so I didn't. I got a small harvest last year, and then this year I'm looking forward to my first full harvest.
So that's a pretty good point. You mentioned the first year you didn't allow your trees to fruit, even though they're probably flowering, or you purchased them with maybe some fruit on there. But it is a good practice to remove the fruit in the first year so that the plant can focus its energies instead of supporting fruit, which are the children, as it can take a toll on the human body. The goal is by removing those children off the fruit tree, the goal is the tree can now focus on root growth and creating more branches, which will ultimately support more fruit in that subsequent year. So it just makes sense to remove those fruit at least in the first year as the plant gets established.
But I bought this property about 3-4 years ago, and I wanted to make, like you're saying, grow privacy hedges. I mean, I guess they're still hedges if they're fruit trees, but I wanted to put plants different places for privacy. And people told me that one of the advantages of living in Southern California is that you can grow fruit trees, and I like fruit, and I thought it might be a nice thing for the property to have an entire landscaping scheme that provided privacy and also fruit.
That's true. And being here in Southern California, you could pretty much grow all the things you would otherwise grow in a tropical place like Hawaii, believe it or not. From passion fruit, I see you've got some guavas here, plenty of citrus, and the main thing you've got to give it, and the main difference climate-wise between Hawaii and Southern California is water. So as long as you provide water, we've got an ideal growing condition where you can pretty much grow everything. And with that, let's go and take the tour of your property.
Let's do it.
Thanks.
All right, so this is the pineapple guava hedge. All of these plants right here are pineapple guavas. I built this in lieu of a railing on the deck. You can see there's a little space in here, and we have recycling containers. They're all irrigated, and it's all pineapple guava. If you come on over here, you can see that this pineapple guava continues all the way down here. These haven't caught up to them, but eventually these are going to catch up, so they're all one hedge. Why don't you come on over, I'll show you my first hybrid citrus tree. So here is this first 5-part hybrid citrus tree. And notice the difference between the red buds here for the Meyer lemon and all the little baby lemons that it's making, even so early in February. And versus these white buds that are the different kinds of oranges. We have on this tree honey mandarin, we have a Valencia orange, and we have a Mineola tangelo. And I believe we have a Washington navel as well. Yeah, Valencia, Mineola, honey mandarin, and here's the last one actually, Washington navel. So there's 4 different kinds of oranges all right here, and this Meyer lemon. And you notice that the Meyer lemon is about half the tree.
Well, let's talk about that.
Let's talk about it.
So here we are now again with that cocktail citrus tree, which again has a few varieties of oranges, and then we've got to my right a Meyer lemon. And whether it be a Meyer lemon or Eureka lemon or even a Lisbon lemon, the lemon varieties are typically a lot more vigorous than the orange variety growth habit. And what Alan's already done, and he demonstrated for me, is that he pruned a branch that was right here in this fork. This was the central leader for the Meyer lemon, and it has since branched out, created all of these flowers. It's got a whole bunch of little fruit on it as well, and it's still the dominant branch even with that pruning that's going on, and no pruning on the orange. Again, because lemons are a lot more vigorous growing in habit than oranges, and so what's going to be a pattern he's going to have to continuously keep in check is that balance between the grafts. And so here we are dealing with a concept known as the balancing of the grafts when you've got more than one variety of plant on a rootstock, as the different varieties will grow differently and you're going to have to keep them in check, otherwise it'll be to the detriment of the other grafts. What'll happen if it's not continuously pruned in check with the other branches and the other varieties is the lemon tree will overpower growing and shading to the detriment of the other branches, which will eventually die back and you'll end up losing the other flavors. So the point in the lesson I want to share is to continuously keep the more vigorous branches in check so that the other branches, and in this example the oranges, have a chance to thrive and capitalize on the sunlight to support those flowers and ultimately fruit. In regards to timing, Alan and I were talking about when should he prune again. He pruned this branch about 3 to 4 months ago. It's already created another foot of growth in just the last few months. And if he prunes it again now with all of these flowers on the plant, the risk is that with a plant structure that's now smaller than a strong base root system, the plant may switch to vegetative growth, which is more plant growth to the detriment of the flowers and fruit. So I recommended to allow these flowers to set the fruit, to wait another 60 to 90 days, and then from there hopefully we'll get some more growth on the orange side, and then we'll bring the lemon side, and even with some of the fruit that's on there, we'll prune it back, allowing some of this fruit that's lower to continue existing. The height will take off, and we'll hopefully get that balance restored between the lemon and the orange varieties on this tree. Well, let's continue with the rest of the tour.
Taking a little Ivy Organics on the stem of this 5-in-1. Get it on there nice and thick. And I usually paint all my trees with Ivy Organics, and it helps protect them throughout the year. And that way, this trunk right here will not experience any cracking when we get into June and July and August, and that sun gets really intense and bakes down on it. Hopefully, it'll protect this this tree right here from any damage. All right, Charles, it's a little bit loud in the background. They're doing some construction on a guardrail, but let me see if I can bring you through the garden. I call it the orchard. Now, the concept for this was to have a privacy-giving, fruit-bearing landscaping that is evergreen. So even in the winter, like we are now, you'd even have some privacy and some foliage, right? So the idea was I have a terraced garden. And in the front terraces, I have semi-dwarf trees and bushes and smaller plants that won't grow up high and block the light on the bigger plants. So the first 3 rows are semi-dwarf plants, and then the 4th row is all full-size plants. So when those get a little bit more mature, they should block that whole street in the background, and they should block all of the guardrail and all that stuff that we're seeing right now. And then the very back row are all deciduous trees. I have 2 peaches and a fig. Now those trees lose their leaves in the winter, so I knew that those trees had to go in the back row because they wouldn't be effective for privacy in the summer. So let's take a tour. Right here I have a Washington Navel Orange Semi-Dwarf. Right here we have 2 cactuses. This smaller cactus is a Peruvian apple cactus, and it hasn't fruited yet, but eventually it will make a fruit, a small dragon fruit looking thing. This is an agave. If you ever want to make some tequila, you could do that with this plant. This here is another mini Olotangelo. They're some of my favorite citruses, and you'll see this is actually the one that replaced the orange tree, the mini Olotangelo that we just painted. This is the same spot he used to be in, and this semi-dwarf tree is doing a lot better than that full-size tree did for whatever reason. And one thing you can notice is this one has really good foliage cover around the trunk, but we will also paint that with Ivy Organics anyways. Over here, a late lane navel orange. Here's a little bit more pineapple guava, and as you can see, this continues the hedge all the way around to meet the deck hedge, and it'll all be one big hedge eventually. Right here we have a Satsuma mandarin. Now this is one of the only this is the only full-size tree on the bottom terraces, and that's because it's going to eventually grow and block this space right here, so we won't have any visual contact with our neighbors. It'll all be blocked. And now I've approached with a layered idea where this will block lower when this gets a little bit taller. This will block up in here, and then this back here, this dancing mandarin, will block kind of low on the fence line. This is another dancing mandarin over here. This one here is also a mini Olotangelo, semi-dwarf. This right here is a Caracara navel orange. This tree is actually on its 3rd year, and it's never made a fruit, so we're hoping this year is the year. It tried last year, but ended up dropping it all when the summer got hot. This right here is a papaya, and it's making its first ever papaya. All these trees are very young. And the nice thing about it is if you guys make frequent visits, you can track the progress of all these trees. And this here, as you've gathered, I like mini Olotangelos, and this is my last mini Olotangelo semi-dwarf. So one day we'll have a lot of Tangelos. Now, if you come over here, this is the 4th row. This is a semi-dwarf navel orange, just a little bush, late navel orange, just a little bush for privacy reasons right here up along the fence line. This here is a loquat. It's the only loquat tree. I believe we're going to do a little pruning on this later, Charles. But this is one of the older trees. It's actually making some fruit for the first time. And this is one of the older trees. This tree's been on the property for about 3 years, but it got moved after the 1st year. So this is its 2nd year in its new spot, and it seems to be taken to it. This here is a Moro blood orange. This is a full-size tree, so this should start to get up into this area and block this part of the view from down there. And now if you come over here, so these are my favorite trees on the property. As you saw, I had one down in the main patio. It was a 5-part grafted citrus. These two right here are actually 6-part grafted citrus. They add Bear's Lime to Meyer Lemon, Honey Mandarin, Washington Navel, Valencia, and Tangelo, because we love our Tangelos. So come on, check it out. This one is a 6-part tree, 6-part grafted. Look how intricately they grafted this right from the base right there. So that's all, every branch is going to have a different fruit on it. They actually did a really good job on the grafting with this tree. And over here is the 2nd one. And this one is the same, they're both the same combination. And look at how the red leaves over here from the Meyer Lemon are different from the green leaves from the oranges. And similarly, look over here, these flowers, I might have to come around a little bit, I don't want to snap it. But yeah, these flowers right here are the Meyer Lemon flowers. Oh, I already ruined a couple of the buds. And so you can see it's even making a few lemons over here. All right, well, while we got a moment of quiet, let's come on up. There's one more I can show you here. This is a dragon fruit cactus. It's never successfully made a fruit yet, but I'll keep you in the loop if it ever does. And come on up here. This is our 4th and final terrace. And this 4th terrace is the deciduous trees. And these are trees, obviously, that lose their leaves in the winter, that aren't very suitable for privacy purposes, but who doesn't love peaches and figs? Come on. These are both, I believe, white peaches. I installed them before I knew the exact variety. We'll have to see. Maybe I'll send you a picture, Charles. You can identify the exact peach for me. But I believe they're the same. This tree actually got run over earlier this year. I sent Charles a photo that he can put up on the screen for you guys. But yeah, this tree was completely run over, and using these stakes, we brought him back up on his feet. And you can see, even without the help of these stakes, he's back on his feet. He's making some leaves right here. And he's going to survive it. So right here you can see where the car actually hit the tree, and it took a big chunk out of the what do you call it, the heart of the tree. And then up here it also took a big scrape out of this branch. All right, Charles, and this is the last fruit tree on the property. This is a mission fig tree. This just went in last year, so this is its first full year, and I believe you're going to go through with me and do a little bit of pruning with this tree today.
It's right there.
About 6 feet tall.
Right?
Come on, let me show you. We have a Dancy tangerine that got a little bit girded. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, if you look right here, Charles, you'll see where a rodent either rubbed up against it or bit it and damaged the exterior of the tree trunk.
And again, there's no weed whackers here on the property, right?
No, that's nothing that a human did.
So that's some animal damage right there. And we're going to talk about protecting that from reoccurring.
All right, let's go get some IV Organics and let's put it to work.
So here we are now at the base of the terrace. Thank you, Alan, for giving us the tour of the, what was it, 4 levels?
Yeah, 4 levels and about 60 odd fruit trees on the property.
So 60 fruit trees, half of them are citrus, half of them are guavas. He's got a lot of pineapple guavas, which are offering, again, that hedge and also a lot of food as well. And then in between it, you've also got figs, you've got peaches, you've got pomegranates, you've got that, not a cactus pear, what was it called again?
It's a Peruvian apple cactus.
The Peruvian apple cactus. So there's a lot of other food items within the food forest, pomegranates that we saw in the other corner of the property.
Dragon fruit.
There's so much happening here, and he's gonna get to enjoy fruit pretty much year round. One of my favorite trees that I saw here on the property was a loquat tree, and if you're looking to enjoy fruits over an extended period of time, loquats is a great way to start the year. They typically flower come October, November, December, and fruit February, March, and April. So they're one of the first fruiting fruit trees you can actually have on your property. So consider putting a loquat. We're going to be pruning that in today's lesson. We're also going to be dealing with what appears to be a rodent girdling one of the citrus trees. And lastly, we're going to conclude with pruning the fig tree in the corner. And it's also, we were talking about strategic placement of a fig. And I said, this is not just my parents, but grandparents, and it probably goes back generations behind that as well, is when it comes to figs, is to keep figs in the corners of your properties, as Alan has done so accidentally, apparently.
Yes, I didn't know about it.
But figs are very caustic. The sap is has been used traditionally for treating warts. I know a significant percent of people that if they brush their skin against the leaves of the fig will break out in a rash. So it is important to make sure that you keep your figs in the corners of your properties, as any of your cactus, anything with spines, things that are too sharp, keep them away from common areas as well. So as we just mentioned, figs, put them on the far extreme corners of your properties, as well as if you've got any cactus, things that are sharp, keep them away from common areas. Just logically, you wouldn't want anybody brushing up against those thorns. What we're also going to talk about is fertilizing. And Alan, tell us what you know about fertilizer.
You should definitely do it to your plants, and it'll help them get more foliage and more fruit, and you should probably do it a couple of times a year. And I was hoping that, Charles, you'd come and help give me some advice on how to fertilize all these fruit trees I have.
Wonderful. I'm putting you on the spot, Alan, and I'm going to do it again in just a second. But as you said, more leaves, more foliage, more fruit, and ultimately it's just like a pet, whether it be a cat, a dog, or anything else. They need food. By giving your plants food, they're going to perform better. So that's one tip when it comes to feeding them. And now, putting you back on the spot again, can you tell us a little bit about fertilizer? What are the elements that should be in a good fertilizer?
I know nitrogen's a part.
That's good.
Yeah, I don't know. Phosphagen?
Good. So phosphorus, you got 2 of the 3 that most people hopefully would know in the gardening world are NPK. Your nitrogen, your P for phosphorus, and your K from the periodic table for potassium. But when it comes to plant health, if you Google it, you'll research and find out that plants need 6 macronutrients, and shockingly, most fertilizers don't have 6 macronutrients until we've now got this product.
Wow.
6 macros plus fertilizers gives your plants all of the 6 macronutrients that they need, including nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, sulfur, and calcium. Those are the 6 macronutrients. And by giving your plants all of the macronutrients that they need, your plants will perform that much better. And so in addition to having the 6 macronutrients, there's a lot of micronutrients, and also includes a lot of the beneficial bacteria and fungus and everything necessary for proper healthy soil. And I came to your house, I don't want to say empty-handed. I didn't bring you coffee or beer or anything else, but I brought you some 6 macros fertilizer for you to test out in your garden, and hopefully you'll report back to us in the weeks and months to follow.
Well, my hope is, Charles, that I can get you to come back here in the late summer and see the results of everything we did today.
Thank you for inviting me to your property, and you're always welcome to my home garden as well. So when it comes to feeding your plants, when would you think would be the best time to be feeding your plants?
I would imagine in the spring and in the summer, Charles, so they have food for budding and making fruit.
I'm so glad you mentioned summer. So spring, your plants are waking up. It's a good time to start feeding your plants. And when it comes to feeding them, I would usually cut back off the recommended dose of fertilizer as the plants again are just warming up and they're just beginning to push out that new growth. But summertime is one of the most important times of the year to feed your plants that most people forget about. When it comes to feeding your plants in the summer, we're dealing with plants that are now getting, come spring, 13 hours of light, summer, 14 hours of light. They're supporting flowers, they're supporting fruit, their metabolic processes are peaking, and that would be the most important time to make sure that the soil and the plants are uptaking all of those macronutrients, the micronutrients, and they're just reaping the benefits of all that you can possibly give them. So summertime is a great time to feed, and then when it comes back to fall, it's another opportunity to give them a little bit more. Again, not as much as summer. You're now tapering, starting slow in spring, peaking in like May, so that those nutrients can get into the soil and start breaking down during the summer months. And then by fall, another small introduction of fertilizer that they'll uptake and hold on to as they go into dormancy. Even if they're evergreen plants such as citrus, they're considered relatively dormant, and the only thing you would do aside from feeding around the soil level is maybe doing a foliar nutritional spray on your green plants such as your guavas that you've got on your property, your citrus, your mango, the plants that continuously stay green. You can give them a foliar nutritional spray, and those leaves will uptake the nutrients through the leaves, as the roots again should not be disturbed with additional fertilizer in those hibernating winter months. That being said, we've got a lot to do. We're going to approach the loquat, we're going to approach the fig, and we're also going to take care of that girdled citrus. So let's get started, Alan.
Let's go.
Here we go. So here we are next to a Dancy mandarin, and as you can see, it's got a pretty nice canopy. It's otherwise protecting the underlying tree trunks and branches, and unfortunately there's some girdling going on. I talked to Alan earlier, and he's like, I'm responsible for 100% of my landscaping. Weed whackers do not come anywhere near my fruit trees, and yet there's damage happening to the trunk. So the suspected culprit would be most likely a rodent, whether it be a mole or vole. It could be gophers, it could also be rats. And what's happening is typically in the winter months, these rodents are starving. There's no more fruits, there's no more nuts, there's no more seeds, and they'll resort to chewing on the tree trunks to get to the underlying saps, and that's where they get their sugars to help pull them and keep them alive during those winter months. What we're going to do to protect the plant is we're now going to be using the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard. The product offers protection as would a whitewash from sunburn, as well as insects and rodents. And the way it does that is it's got these 7 natural garden oils, which include castor, cinnamon, cloves, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint, in addition to these inert base ingredients, which now in the 2019 formula includes diatomaceous earth. What we're going to do now is I've taken the product, I've already mixed it before the video, but what we're going to do is simply brush on the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard around the tree trunk to prevent further reoccurrence of girdling rodents here on the property. If the rodent made its way all the way around the circumference of the plant and damaged the underlying cambium tissue, it would certainly result in the tree death. By now protecting the plant, it's going to have a chance to heal over those wounds and continue to have a long, healthy, and productive life. And the way the product works is the product again has castor oil as well as cinnamon and spearmints. The mints and the castor oil are proven rodent repellents. And the goal is if the rodents come to visit the plant, they're going to be repelled by the scent and they're going to end up leaving this plant alone and going to otherwise unprotected plants. But this tree will otherwise be protected by whitewashing the tree trunk as we're doing right here. Well, let's get on now to the loquat tree. Follow me. So here we are next to Alan's loquat tree, which he transplanted about 2 years ago. As you can see, there's a couple of fruit here, right where my hand is. And overall, one would think the plant looks pretty good, but there's a lot of death within here as well. There's a lot of branches that are not performing, such as this one here in front of me. Alan strategically placed this loquat against the fence as he's going to be using it as a hedge, as a privacy hedge, as there's going to be a house here next door to him that's currently under construction, hence all this noise. But this is a great place, and he can prune it to basically control the height to about 8 to 10 feet or whatever desired height is, and have, again, a hedge that's also very productive and fruit giving. What we're going to do here, and what I suspect, is that there's all this damage happening to the tree trunk because when he transplanted it, there was some transplant shock going on. There may be also a situation where the base of the roots are smaller than the otherwise above ground tree structure. So when Alan transplanted it, the chances are you've damaged a lot of the root compared to the above ground structure, and you never want a base that's smaller than the above ground structure, and that's typically what results in the shock and the transplant shock to the plant. All of these dead branches are more likely than not the result of that transplant movement, where the roots could not support as much of the branch structures, and the plant had to make the decision to allow some dieback to occur, even though overall, if you take a look at the plant, it looks relatively good. What we're going to do now is, whenever you see any dead branches within your tree structure, regardless of the time of the year, we're going to end up pruning them out. And here we've got a branch, which again, even if it had life, and I know there is none in here, but we can break the branch, you can see that there's no greenness at all. That cambium is completely dried out. But the point is, we're not looking for whether or not it's green or not. I'm just looking at the overall vigor and health of the branch is no good. And I'm going to bring it back to the next best branch, which is right here. And I'm going to cut it as flush as I can to the tree trunk, so that as the tree continues to expand, it'll heal over that wound. What I'm also going to do with that pruned branch is we're also going to seal it with the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard, and that's going to keep beetles and termites from penetrating that now exposed wood area and potentially hollowing out the supporting wood structure. And now let's continue cutting back on the rest of the deadwood within this plant. Again, this is another structure. There's a couple of green leaves. There's even some teeny tiny fruit. But overall, the overall vigor in this branch is much weaker than the overall life that's going on within the rest of the plant. So we're going to quickly cut those back as well, like so. And we'll continue pruning all the way around. Here's some more branches here in the front, completely dried out. We're going to follow it down to the next life, which there's a couple of buds with some leaves right in here. I'm basically going to prune it about 1/4 of an inch above that location. We've also got it at an angle so that water doesn't accumulate, resulting in rot. And then we're going to go with the 3-in-1 plant guard. And again, this is something you would not do with paint, as paint is designed to last forever. You put it on your house, and 100 years later, you're still going to have paint on your house. But you put it on the plant, within a year to up to 3 years, the plant's going to expand, and all of that residue is going to wind up in your soil for a very long period of time. So this, again, is a product that is registered material for use in organic agriculture, and we're using it as a healthier alternative to protect those exposed wounds and any exposed tree trunk that's getting too much light, whether it be summer or winter time. You can also protect it through this method of whitewashing. Let's continue with the pruning of the tree. And I'm just working my way all the way around the tree, removing all of the weakest branches. And you can see in just a matter of minutes, I'm going to end up with a plant that's going to be 100% green with no dead branches. And you can see overall, if you can see the before and after, we're looking a lot better now than we did before the pruning. I'm hoping you see that. Again, we had a good 20% of branch death, whereas right now it's 100% green. What I'm also going to do to help increase the vigor is I'm going to take out a couple more branches. Again, the goal is to make sure that we have a base that's stronger and healthier, and we'll push that much more life into the remaining branches that we keep. The other thing that Alan pointed out is that he wanted to kind of espalier the tree, and while the branches are young, you can easily position stakes on either side of the plant and direct the branches in the direction that you want it, and you end up with something known as a freestanding espalier, which is something I've done with a lot of the citrus on my property, where they're compact and narrow, but you don't necessarily have to weave them into a fence or have a structure that's completely flat. You can have something that's maybe narrow and accomplish an espalier position by using stakes. So now that we've pruned all of the dead branches, you can see that we've eliminated a good, if you can take a look here at the ground, probably about 20 to 30% of all of these dead branches. And now what we've got left is a green tree that's going to be very grateful that it now can redirect all of those sugars and resources that the plant's making into the better of the branches, instead of trying to support some dead tissues or dying tissues within the plant structure. So we're off to a much better start for this loquat. And now let's go and visit the fig. Follow me. So here we are now next to Alan's black mission fig. I don't know if you want to zoom in. You can see it's a pretty dark fig, a little purplish in color. When it comes to your fig trees, it's important to prune them quite significantly every year by as much as 50%, 70%, and I'd say no less than 20% every single year. The reason that you'd want to err on maybe 20% is if you're truly relying on that breba crop, which is your first crop, which typically happens about 3 to 4 weeks earlier than the main crop. And the main crop is, for most figs, the most delicious crop. The sweetest and the largest fruit you'll typically get is on your main crop, which will be produced on the new growth for the year. Your breba crop will grow and be the result of last year's wood. This is all last year's wood, being the growth that was accomplished in last year. And again, when it comes to fig development and that main crop of figs, it's all going to be on the new wood. If we don't prune the fig at all, then we're only going to expect a few inches of growth on top of this beautiful structure. It's going to grow a few inches, but again, if that main crop is only on the new growth and it's only going to grow a few inches, you're only going to get fruit and that main crop on just a few inches of that growth for the year. But if I can prune it back by 50 to 70%, and again, you don't want to prune it also too severely, because then the plant will be forced into a 100% vegetative state where all it's going to want to do is grow. So you got to get that balance right, and you're going to learn this better and better year after year. But what we're going to do to this is we're going to prune it about 50%. The goal is the plant is going to regrow all that you see in this upcoming year, and it's also going to push that extra few inches, becoming even a bigger structure. And with all of that new growth, every leaf on average will be supporting another fig, and that's the goal at the end of the day, is to get as much fruit as we can out of this fig tree. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come down with these branches. What I'm doing is I'm following these nodes. You can clearly see this on last year's growth. You can see there's a node with a bud that's right there, and this here will either create fruit or leaf out or create another branch. You can come down, you can see over here is the beginning of what will be another branch. And what we're going to want to do is basically cut at one of these nodes. I'm actually going to select this node down here, and you can see that there's a bud right there, and it could either, again, turn into a fig or it can turn into another branch. We're going to prune it about 1/4 of an inch above. Again, we're cutting it at an angle so that water doesn't accumulate on the surface, and you will then go with the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard, and it would probably be best to wait for the sap to dry, which will happen within a matter of 10 minutes to a half an hour. And you're going to want to basically protect that surface like so as well. I want to warn you, as we discussed earlier, when it comes to figs, you typically want to plant your figs on the corner of the property because the sap that comes out of it, and I shouldn't be touching it, especially without gloves, but here it is. You can see that it's milky white that's coming out of it. The sap of a fig has been used historically to even treat warts. It's that caustic. So again, it's advisable to keep your figs on the periphery of your property because you wouldn't want to get sap on any children that are within your gardens or even other people that may come into contact. And again, there's a significant percentage of people that are quite allergic if they get even the leaves of the figs on their skin. So when they go to harvest, sometimes that can result in rash too. So keep that, again, towards the perimeter of your property. And what Alan's done is he kept it on the perimeter of his property, as I've done as well, for the purpose that it's not green year round. So Alan's got his citrus and his guavas and his mangoes and all of these evergreen plants in the forefront of his garden, all the deciduous trees that drop their leaves in the fall and winter, such as the figs, in the furthest back part of the garden. And that's a logical decision. And so let's continue with pruning here. And here. And there. So we started off with a structure that was about 6 to 7 feet tall, and now we're probably somewhere closer to about 4 feet. There's a observation that Alan found that I want to share with you as well is, what do we do about this? And you can see that there's a additional part of the primary leader that was cut that created these additional branches to happen, but this is not doing anything. It will not grow, won't sprout. The energy and the fluids within the tree are coming from the trunk into these two branches and just kind of skipping over this. And as you can see, the pith is also collapsing upon itself, and this will eventually become a perfect entryway for beetles, termites, and even ants to colonize and start working its way into the heart of the tree or the heartwood. What should be done, and as you can see with all the prunings that we've done, we've cut very close to where the node was, as the node will regenerate and grow a new branch, leaving very little to no wood. And as the branch continues to grow, it'll eventually heal over the wound. This wound will never heal in this condition, and what needs to be done is it needs to be pruned, and you can hear how dry it is. This is completely dead wood. You can see that. No sap, no greenness, nothing happening here, as this is all dead. But what will happen now is as this tree structure continues to expand, it will eventually heal over this wound. Again, in the meantime, we'll protect the wounds with the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard, just like so. So Alan's a little concerned if, we now are going to end up with a dwarf tree. I guarantee you that by late spring, early summer, this tree will be the same size, if not bigger, than whatever it was before we pruned it. And again, the advantage with pruning like this, because the fruit and the main crop is going to happen on this year's growth compared to, for example, an apple tree where those blossoms are dependent on last year's growth. And then you got to be careful, removing all of those potential buds that'll create the fruit. But when it comes to figs, and for that main crop, which is the most delicious and most abundant crop, the more you prune it, to some limitation, but the more you prune it, the more it grows, and ultimately the more fruit you'll get to enjoy. And Alan's going to report back to us with those results. And now let's go and visit the car accident peach tree. So come and follow me. So here we are now next to the peach tree that a vehicle came crashing into. If you come a little closer, you can take a look at the damage that's happened here on the tree branch. You can see that the underlying cambium tissues are already beginning to heal. You can see that callousing happening. This here is some just dead bark, but there's life along the edges, and right in the middle where you see all this like blackish brown coloration is some of the fungus that's happening on the supporting wood structure. So we got bark, underlying cambium tissues, which are callousing, forming those ridges, and then that's the underlying wood structure that we're going to want to protect using, again, the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard. The goal is obviously going to be protection from the summer sun, but we're also going to be offering protections from beetles and termites entering, penetrating that wood, and leading to potential damage below. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 plant guard protection against damaging sunburn insects and rodents, and we're going to be using this product to protect all of that exposed wood. And what it'll also do is help from potential sunburn harming this area, and instead it can remain cool as those callus tissues continuously form and heal and eventually recover over this wound. And this damage continues further down as we work our way into the trunk. You can see over here is even much graver damage, and you can even see the cracks in the wood if you come close enough. You can see that there's some cracking happening. Again, this is a great entryway for disease and pests to go into. And again, being that the damage was about, I'm guessing, 4 to 6 months ago, you can see that there's some healing callus tissue. There's something that's nesting also within the plant structure right there. So again, insects are beginning to live within these wounds, and to prevent that from happening, again, we're going to want to whitewash over those surfaces using the Ivory Organics 3-in-1 Plant Guard. The oils will offer that insect repellent protection, and the plant will better heal protected. And unlike, again, a latex or a tar-based product, Ivory Organics is porous, and that'll result in better plant health than a tar and latex, which creates a water barrier and potentially leads to wood rot behind those surfaces. So this is the healthier way of protecting all of that exposed wood. And again, if there's also any grafted exposed wood areas, this would be also a perfect grafting seal as well. So what we're gonna do later on is we're gonna continue whitewashing the entire heart of the tree, being the lower tree trunk and the lower branches, with the Ivory Organics products. So as I've been whitewashing the tree trunk, I noticed that these wood chips are also up a little high. Wood chips are one of my favorite things to put around all your plants, vegetables, trees, but make sure that those wood chips are not in contact with the tree trunk. Your wood chips are excellent absorbers of water. So as the wood chips break down, all of the elements that went into creating these trees is otherwise going to be returned back to the soil, feeding the earthworms, the beneficial bacteria, the beneficial fungus, and all of those elements are ultimately going to benefit all of the trees within the garden as well. But it's very important to make sure you keep these wood chips away from the tree trunk. As we pull back, you can see that he's got a nice 2 to 3 inch layer of wood chips around the tree. But you're going to want to keep these wood chips away from the tree trunk, as the moisture from the wood chips and the moisture against the tree trunk can result in a phenomenon known as stem rot. So we're going to want to build the 2 to 3 inch layer of wood chips starting with no contact on the tree trunk, and then building the wood chips up 2 to 3 inches away. And as you can take a look at all the life on these wood chips. You can see all of this white that's happening. These are all the filaments from the hypha, which are the root filaments of the fungus that are working on breaking down, decomposing these wood chips, and returning all of those elements and nutrients back to the tree. This is an excellent sign. Take a look at the sawbug. He's doing his function here as well. So another thing we're going to do is also prune the tree, assuming that the car that came crashing into this peach tree also displaced some of the roots, and to help again offset that, any shock that may have resulted from that and any damage that may have happened to the root system, again, we want to make sure we have a stronger base than above ground plant structure. That pretty much applies unanimously, and that's why all plants will typically benefit from a minimal, even if it's a plant you never prune, a 5 to 10% pruning will result in an above ground plant structure that's smaller compared to the base root structure, and that'll result in a plant that's going to appear a lot more healthy and more vigorous, and it's just going to look that much more appealing than in the event that it's the reverse, being a top heavy plant compared to a root system that can't support it. And then you're going to start seeing the diseases, you're going to see fruit fail, you're going to see inferior growth patterns. So again, to accomplish and offset that, what we're going to do is also bring the plant in check by pruning some of these branches. We're going to take some of the height off, and we're going to basically thin the plant out. And so let's do that together. So again, here we're following these branches down. I'm coming down to the nearest branch and cutting it at about 1/4 of an inch away, like so. And over here, this is one of the primary leaders of the plant. We're gonna bring it down like so. and we'll continue this pattern around. Unlike the fig tree, when it comes to peaches, you got to be careful how much you prune. If you prune by 50 to 70%, you can pretty much guarantee no fruit set, as what's going to happen is you're going to force the plant into a vegetative state where it's just simply going to grow, and any potential for flower is going to be lost. But these tips are where we can expect flowers to be coming out of within the next 30 to 60 days. As again, we're here on March 1st. Within the next 30 to 60 days, the temperatures will be warm enough. These plants will warm up and push new growth, as we saw a little bit here and there throughout the plant. I'll share with you, and you can also expect some flowers as well. When it comes to whitewashing offers an additional benefit that most people overlook, is also preventing premature blooms. And by whitewashing the structure, what you're doing is you're creating a lighter structure. If you take a look at the wood here, it's naturally lighter in color, and that's going to help reflect some of the excess light, creating a lighter wood. But as you can see, some of the younger wood is darker, and some plants are even much more darker than that. If premature blooms is a concern, I would recommend whitewashing in color white. Ivory Organics offers colors brown and green to create a more natural, aesthetically looking good tree that offers that protection against, again, summer sunburn, insects, and rodents. But by doing color white, you're going to create a plant that's a little bit more cooler, reflecting even more light, and that's going to create a much cooler structure. And what you can do in that case, so as we just said, the sunscreen protection of using Ivory Organics is protection in the summer from summer sunburn, in the winter from winter sun scald, which is when the nighttime low temperatures are freezing but the daytime temperatures are warm, and that results in cracking of the bark. And then this is the point we're talking about right now, is premature blooms. And then for pruned and grafted wounds, we're going to also be covering all of our pruned and exposed areas. Also serves as an anti-transparent, resulting in increased cloning success and reduced transplanting shock. And what we're going to do, and what I want to demonstrate for you here, is that we can take a look at all of these buds here, and we can take the Ivory Organics and brush the product over the entire plant, like so. By protecting the entire branch, including the buds, we're going to end up with a cooler structure, and that's going to allow the plant to remain cooler until we get completely out of winter and into the warmer weather. And that's going to result in blooms that, again, as we just mentioned, premature blooms. We're going to be avoiding the premature blooms by getting more blooms at the right and warmer time of the year, so that we have higher success. And so by preventing premature blooms, we can expect higher fruit yields come spring and summer. So brushing an entire large structure such as this peach tree here may be a little bit too burdensome, and so the product can also be used as a foliar spray. It may not be as thick coverage, but you can also control the dilution rate, as well as the pint-sized can can make up to 5 gallons of the ready-to-use foliar spray products made by Ivory Organics. And you can take a look right here. I'm hoping you can zoom in. You can see right here under the directions, it reads, foliar spray directions, makes 5 gallons of ready-to-use spray for complete plant protection, including foliage, sunscreen, and pest repellent spray. Ideal application at time of transplanting plants and trees in times of extreme weather. And so there's all of those directions. So maybe the more practical way to whitewash this entire structure, or to do an entire orchard, is to put it into a gallon sprayer, and I've demonstrated that in other videos. But you would basically prepare the solution into gallon spray containers, and then I can just get above the plant and around the plant quite quickly, and in a matter of minutes have this entire plant structure whitewashed, resulting in a cooler plant structure, again with the goal of preventing premature blooms to maximize on fruit yields come spring and summer. So I thought we were done, but you had another question. What's that?
Yes, my main goal today going into the spring was I wanted to get all these plants fertilized. And I wanted to talk about, how much to fertilize them, how to mix up the fertilizer, and how much you put on each individual plant. Do the different plants take different fertilizer?
Great. So all plants need the 6 macronutrients, hence again the name 6 macros plus. The product is, it basically comes in 2 size bags. One is 11.8 ounces and it makes up to, if I can bring this in a little closer, it makes up to 20 gallons of liquid fertilizer. You would simply take a tablespoon to a gallon of water, and this one here is a 2-gallon watering can. You would simply take a tablespoon, so if it's 2 gallons, 2 tablespoons, allow it to sit for about an hour so that the product can really break down, and then we're just gonna mix it. We're gonna do that together. The larger bags, which are 4 pounds, makes up to, and let me bring this a little closer, makes 120 gallons of liquid fertilizer. You don't necessarily need to put it in a watering can. You could just scatter the product around the base of the plant. And let's do that together. There's also 2 products. One of them is known as the 6 Macros Plus Super Blend, which has a higher NPK, and then there's the Premium Blend, which has a lower NPK. What does that mean to you?
Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
So what would higher and lower?
Higher concentrations of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
So let's take a look at, for example, and this is not just directed to Alan here, but for all of you, when you pick up a bag of fertilizer, you might see NPK. All bags of fertilizer should actually have NPK on there, but it'll be followed by 3 numbers on there. In this example, I'm looking at the Premium Blend, and it has a 2 and a 4 and a 4. What do you think the 2 and the 4 represent?
How much nitrogen, how much potassium, how much phosphorus?
So how much nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and it's correct. The point is, it's the percentage of the product you can expect to see nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. This product also has, again, magnesium, sulfur, and calcium. The Premium Blend has up to 17% calcium, but compare now the Premium, and I'll actually put up a card where the viewers can also see the 2 bags of fertilizer side by side. But if you take a look at the Super Blend now, you can see what the percentage of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium is relative to the Premium. What do you see? What do you see now?
Much higher percentages.
Yeah, so we're dealing with now 13% nitrogen, 12% phosphorus, 13% potassium, and that is actually one of the highest NPKs you'll find in the organic gardening fertilizer world. So you've got a very, high NPK, more soluble product, so that when you add it to your watering can, as we're going to do right now, what we're going to do is, and I'm going to work with the Super Blend, being also ingredient wise, it's got a ton of ingredients. If you take a look at the Super Blend, it's got feather meal, alfalfa meal, fishbone meal, kelp meal, cottonseed meal, potassium sulfate, glacial rock dust, neem cake, rock phosphate, oyster shell flour, and that's only one line of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines plus. There's a ton of ingredients in here to accomplish the 6 macronutrients plus all the beneficial bacteria plus all the beneficial fungus spores that you'll find in here to create that living soil and also get your plants all of those macro and a lot of the micronutrients for a complete balanced fertilizer. So what we're going to do here is we're simply going to open up the product, and I've got my tablespoon measuring cup, and we're simply going to take, being that I only fill up this watering can halfway, so it's got 1 gallon instead of 2 gallons of water, we're simply going to add the product. I want to share this with you as well so you can see what it looks like. Right there. And like we just discussed, you're going to want to wait now about an hour and allow the contents to truly break down. You're going to want to stir the contents as well. If you filter the solution through a mesh, you can also use the solution as your foliar nutritional spray. You can put it in your tank sprayers. You can also use it as a compost tea. It's a very versatile product. What I'm going to do now, and let's assume we've added the fertilizer to the solution about an hour ago. We're gonna thoroughly mix it, and now we're gonna be using it as both a foliar feed and a soil feed at the same time. We're simply gonna remove this watering can end like so. And we're simply gonna pour the solution over the entire plant. The leaf is gonna serve as the sponge, absorbing a lot of those macro and micronutrients, and it's just gonna help the plant start taking those elements in right away while the roots do its thing and bringing and uptaking those elements as well. So let's go and do that together as well.
Sure.
So here we are now with the Ivory Organic solution. And again, we're gonna water the plant from the top down, just like so. And this tree here is a late lane navel orange. And we can just put the rest of the solution right in the drip zone of the tree. And that's it. We're good for a month. When it comes to liquid feeds, they typically don't last as long as if you do it as a granular feed. In addition, you can scatter the product in its dry form around the base of the tree and just simply reapply that once every 3 months. And the product can also be used as a supplement to your compost tea. And it's just such a versatile product. So just many ways of using the product. Let me just show you the back of the label here. If we take a look here, you can see again the derived from ingredients. Very expansive list for use in your soil directions, as well as vegetables and annuals, in addition to, as we just did, as a foliar feed using 1 tablespoon per gallon of water. And then right there as a compost tea, same thing, you simply use a tablespoon per gallon of water. So very beneficial, a lot of the micronutrients, all of the macronutrients, and contains the beneficial microbes and mycorrhiza. Fantastic product. Again, it makes 20 gallons for this net weight 11.8 ounce product.
Well, Charles, thank you so much for joining me in the orchard today. You have done miracles all throughout the terraces and the side gardens and no man's land, and we've really tackled the entire property today. I can't tell you how much I thank you for coming over.
No, thanks so much, Alan. And here we are in Alan's orchard, and this is so appropriately named. Had a ton of fun, and it's been fun being here now for the 2nd year and just watching the results of your own urban food forest and the things you've been able to accomplish, and so eager to see what's going to happen next. I mean, so much is going to happen being here we are the first week of March and spring upon us, and just seeing what summer's going to leave you with, hopefully a bountiful of fruit with more and more for many more years to come. So thank you again for having me. And if you've enjoyed this educational moment brought to you by Ivory Organics, be sure to give us a thumbs up, and most importantly, by subscribing down below, you'll be connected to this and all of our other educational gardening videos. And also don't forget to hit that push bell notification to get notification as soon as these educational moments are released. From all of us here at Ivory Organics and from Alan's orchard, wishing you all happy gardening.
We grow cool plants.
We grow cool plants.
I got all of that one, bro. That was a good show.